The views and opinions expressed in these historical letters that may contain vernacular used in the World War II era, the post-war era, and the Cold War era do not reflect the views and opinions of any of the individuals involved with this project, including, but not limited to, the podcast's creators. Good morning, Jamie.
Good morning, Allison.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm back to drinking coffee. As much as it's fun to drink tea for an episode when we go to England, I much prefer my coffee, so I've decided to return back to it, but still using some British stoneware here, some Denby stoneware from the 70s, so still from England.
It's beautiful. It matches your outfit.
Thank you. So this is...
Well, we had 4 letters last week.
We did. Mm-hmm.
We did. We found out Sweetie was in Lacona.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And she was being made to be an office girl.
Yes.
And she's not happy about it.
No, she's not. And she's only happy when Jeanne's around. Jeanne's a lot closer. Jeanne can visit, but Jeanne is in Des Moines. She lives in Des Moines. She works in Des Moines.
Mm-hmm.
So in the meantime, Sweetie's going to be put to work as much as she can at home in Lacona, because now Chester and Laura have another area of responsibility. He's still the town doctor, but now Chester bought a farm.
He bought a farm.
He bought a farm. Just like Matt Damon bought a zoo. Chester bought a farm. So...
He bought a farm in which to putter.
And do other things. Yeah, but mostly putter.
Yeah.
And they were moving. So there's the midst of this move. Lou's in England. Yeah, just a lot going on. She's really at the end of that second trimester still at this point.
Well, so we had 4 letters last week. We have 3 this week.
Mm-hmm.
And our very first one is from Lou.
Yep, we're going to resume with Lou. Before we do, just everybody who's listening, if you could please like, share, and subscribe to the Love Sweetie podcast on YouTube. It really helps us out. Check that notifications bell if you'd like to get notified when new episodes are available, which is every Sunday, but every now and then a bonus episode drops, and sometimes on a different day. Most recently, the episode about N.A.S. Hutchinson. If you didn't listen to that yet, go ahead and check that out. That's the one with the cover art that shows Jiminy Cricket. So if you're wondering why that has anything to do with the United States Navy, check out that bonus episode if you missed it. Otherwise, if you're listening on our audio channels, if you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, we really appreciate that. And then check out the website for all the additional content at www.lovesweetiepodcast.com. But with that out of the way, Jamie, here's Lou.
England, land of rain, fog, drizzle, and mist. Right now we're having it all. July 11, 1945. Dear Jeanne, my God, what am I saying? Received your nice letter today. I say nice because it was nice. I enjoy your letters very much. There are very few and far between, but I do realize you are busy and working so hard, and after all, who am I to complain? I think you're about 3 up on me. 11 hours a day. Good gosh. Or is it on your own? If I know you, it's on your own. I never saw anyone who enjoyed their work so much like you do. That's a good way to feel, though. That's exactly how I feel about my job. Bah! You ask about the baby's dresser. Do I want a dark one or a blonde one? Do they have a green one? Just a second, and I'll turn on the green light. No kidding, though. I wish I could be there to see them. I have a distorted sense of beauty, and I'd probably see some monstrosity and like it instead. I really couldn't make a decision from this distance. My eyes aren't what they used to be. If your mind is made up, though, I'd like you to use your own judgment. I know you will pick the nicest and the most practical, so do that for me, will you? Just choose for me.
He's so funny.
He is. Yep, absolutely. Oh my gosh, my eyes aren't what they used to be. Lou's in England. You can't see what dressers Jeanne's looking at in Des Moines.
But so she's picking out, so it seems like Jeanne is picking out dressers for the baby. Oh, what a sweet gift. Yep. And so she's trying to get some input from Lou, even though he's not there.
Yep.
And I love that he wrote to Jeanne. He wrote, "Dear Jeanne," instead of Agatha.
Right.
Or Abigail or something. That was really cute.
And he catches himself. My God, what am I saying? Like, oops, I wrote your actual name. I forgot. Funny. I don't usually do that. So yeah.
And this is fun. He has got such a lovely personality. He's so fun.
He does.
And to see these letters from him and see the relationship with Jeanne is just so awesome. So, but they're still trying to like do stuff for Sweetie, even though he's overseas.
Yeah.
Yes, Jeanne, I too hope for a boy, but gosh, Jeanne, aren't little girls cute? They're much cuter than little boys. I do want a boy, but I won't be disappointed if it's a girl. I know Sweetie will there's really not much we can do about it. Boy or girl, we'll both love him or her to death. Just you wait and see. I have never received the letter about the daily gifts for David, and I am really in the dark. I'll bet it's something I should know about, but I'll have to confess I don't. So sorry I can't comment on them or offer any suggestions. I hope you can get a letter back to me in time to carry out your plans, however. I am hoping to be home by that time, but at the present I can't say for sure. I think I could say, though, that 2 months at the most, then I'll be home. So you're taking me up on the English green suit? God help me now, me and my big mouth. I hope by now Sweetie is with you. It's a swell idea, and I know it will do her a world of good. I know she shouldn't be in better hands, so I won't have a thing to worry about. What do you think of her? Is she progressing okay? Well, Jeanne Velma Jeanne, I hope you can read this, or I should say decipher it. If you can't, look up a moron, he'll be able to read it. Hoping to hear from you again soon. Hoping to see you a lot sooner. Take care of my Sweetie. Love, Abraham.
The first time I read this, and he said, "If you can't, I hope you can read this, or should I say decipher it? If you can't, look up a moron."
Look up a moron. Yeah.
It makes me laugh every time I read it.
Yep. Yeah, he takes so much joy in making fun of himself at all times. And it speaks to his humble character, but like that phrase, there's something so perfect about, well, this is kind of rambling, so go find a moron and he'll read it for you and interpret and translate. Yeah, it's just perfect, and it's his character. I love that we can see his character through the letters, right? We can see hers. We got the implication about Jeanne's character. She's clearly in cahoots, even though we don't see her letters. We also get the reminder that her first name is actually Velma in this letter, which is easy to forget because it's rarely in use. Especially, I've seen it like in initial form, like when she would initial something, it'd be VJD. We would see it that way. But Velma Jeanne, yeah, but everybody just calls her Jeanne. So he's having a little bit of fun. I like that he doesn't mind about the baby's gender. He is still hoping for the boy, but you know, he's fine with it otherwise. And then he's just basically like, yeah, you know, I'm glad he understands that she's gonna be stressed if she's just home with her parents. He wants her to be in Des Moines too. Where she wants to be is just like be constantly around this really positive source. Not that Chester and Laura aren't, but I think he even perceives so far away, it's gonna be less stressful if she's just with her sister, and that's it.
Yeah. And we also get another mention of the green suit.
Right, we get the next mention of the green suit. The color green is just going to permeate the history of the family pretty much from this point on. It is going to become a favorite color, and it's just seeing those references to green all over the place is really beautiful every time it comes up. So it might not be something so obvious for our listeners, but just to the family, I know it's like, yep. Graham Green is essentially going to be a nickname for it in the later generations. There's going to be even a particular shade.
Are you serious? I love that.
Yeah, Graham Green. Like, it's I don't know if it's this shade of green, the green suit, but yeah, it's going to be very connected, just as a symbolic thing with the family. But that being said, we still have 2 more letters today, and we're going to go back to Iowa, go back to Sweetie. We're going to catch up with her and see if she's feeling any better about things.
Lacona, Iowa, July 12th, 1945. Dear Jeanne, your nice letter came yesterday, and I shall hurry to answer it now. We, too, are sorry that you're not going to get home this week. The $91 check is a pretty good persuader, though, excuse my mercenary soul, and so I guess we will live until you do come, providing it isn't too long. I want Lou to see the bed and dresser set very much, and I have hopes that he'll have his orders, and so will know where it is to be set up and put to work. Pajamas, too. Heavens, at that rate, I can afford to lay around for months. I hope, though, you're not going in for all these things too deeply. I can see, after you saw my Apache pajamas, that you'll have reason to be concerned. But to be honest, I've 2 pair of pajamas strictly mediocre, and 2 gowns put away. The gowns are brand new, but I believe you know my aversion to nightgowns, so believe me, the pajamas will be appreciated very much. Right now, in case you'd like them, here are both boys' latest addresses. Lieutenant R.C. Demery, box number 22, USNAS, Atlanta, Georgia. I can't know how much longer he'll be there, but he's hoping to stop off again on the way to California. Lieutenant Frankie Demery, O-904321. Care of Commander, Army Air Bases. Care of Postmaster, APO 331. San Francisco, California. They've heard from Frank a couple of times, but when I was in the mood to write, we'd lost his latest address. He's never mentioned the coming baby, though Maida wrote he was as pleased as could be.
Yeah, so little updates on the brothers here, which I think are important. Before we get into the updates from the brothers, she's not in Des Moines, as he was hoping. She's still at home in Lacona because Jean's working 11-hour days, as Lou had previously noted. But they see that $91 check. She's doing really well with the overtime. It's like, hey, if you've got some good employment and they're like, well, we can't really fault you for not coming home.
Yeah.
But as to the boys here, so Robert, Bob, and Frank. So Bob, we already knew he was in Georgia from a previous letter. But she notes here, I don't know how much longer he'll be there. He's hoping to stop on his way to California. So he's switching to the West Coast again, which puts us closer to that Pacific theater. So it's just uncertainty with what's happening. Frank is care of postmaster. No, we don't have an address for Frank. Care of postmaster means it's going through the military mail in the West as well. So at this point, there's some concern about the Pacific. There has to be. This is still predating any news that there's any other planned except that land invasion of Japan, which I've been talking about for some time in these episodes. And then we finally get a little bit of an update from Frank by way of Maida. So thank you, Maida, for giving us a little read here on what's going on. I think what's being mentioned here is Frank's been told in passing that Sweetie's pregnant, and Maida has at least dropped a note somewhere along the line that he's very happy for Sweetie in this case.
I believe Daddy will send the footlocker off to Marion, as you asked. He wondered if you'd ask $6 for it, and says that you will be accountable to Frank. I hate to sound like grabby-gertie, but over the telephone you said you'd bought me another dress. Is it ready-made or yard goods? Typically, I've just now become concerned about such things as my clothes, my hair, that I want to have taken care of before Lou gets home. The blue maternity dress is already almost too small. Any little breeze catches the slit skirt and leaves me indecently exposed. The red one is pretty nice, yet, though the hem needs to be. The cut-off smocks have been my salvation, and I hope to get 2 more made over, but they are strictly everyday-ish. Mom has some lovely brown Bemberg rayon that I'm going to make up into one good dress that I can wear to meet Lou's train without looking like a tramp. But Mom says one should know what you've bought before we cut into it, so I'd appreciate your writing me about it so that we could start on it. Frankly, I'm ashamed of how I look, and so I've got to start right now making amends. I'll not have a great deal of time either, since Lou hopes to leave there on July 15th. And I guess he'll be here soon after August 1st. I finished the applique work on the quilt last night, and if I do say so, it does look nice. The next-door neighbor lady is going to loan me some of the round quilting hoops, like we saw in Yonkers that day when we bought the quilt. I want so much to have it done by the time Lou comes.
She's very excited.
Yeah.
She's expecting it too. Like he's coming home. There's no question.
Yeah.
She just doesn't know when.
Right. Yeah, when it gets prioritized. And then we have this huge section about sewing, and we know that Sweetie's pretty good with making things, and so is Laura. it was later that it was revealed. I saw a work from Jeanne where she recounts, what everybody's skills were. This is after so I said it in the first episode. Jeanne is the last of the siblings to pass away. She is the sole remaining child. She passes away in 2011. Jeanne, right before she died, but after Sweetie had passed, and Sweetie passes in 2009. So they're only 2 years apart here. In that interim period, Jeanne writes about the early childhood of, and we'll have to go into this at some point as like a bonus episode, the early childhood from like the 20s and 30s, the movement of the family, because as was noted in the previous episode, Chester just bought that house in Lacona, but it was the first house he ever bought. He moves around a lot. They're in at least probably around a dozen different locations over the course from like South Dakota to places in Iowa where he's practicing. So some of the kids were born in different places and they all had different skills. So when you think, we don't hear too much about the kids when they're super young. The one thing we do know from that document is Jeanne documents that Sweetie, who would say that she wasn't the best at sewing, was absolutely beyond everybody else. She was 100% the best at this kind of work. So while she's self-defeating all the time, with so many of her letters, when she says something, it does look nice. I mean, she's exceptionally proud of it because by default, she's really good at this work. She'd been picking up tatting as a skill in Kansas. And then here she's talking about the applique work on the quilt. She's talking about quilting hoops. So she's clearly making some sort of a baby blanket or quilt that she wants to work on. She wants that done before Lou gets back. And then she's working with Laura, who's the other one who's exceptional. So they're just going to try to cut costs everywhere that they can and just make whatever they need for the baby at this point. That's going to be how she's going to spend her time, especially because she's not going to be able to move around as much. It's not going to be as easy, especially heading into that third trimester. I think she's basically in the third trimester at this point. So quilting is a good activity at this point.
It is. Quilting, you don't have to sit. You can sit and do that. Yeah. And this is something, an interesting problem that you would have is that you need maternity clothes. And I don't think that that's probably anything that you could really buy too much of.
Not as much as we can today.
And there'd be no point to it because, you're only able to wear like a maternity outfit for like a very short time, like a few months, and then you're done.
Right.
So, but you need it. You need something.
Right. Yeah. This is not a family that just buys things for short term. Not at all.
Our settling has progressed very slowly and delayed largely by OBs and everything else. I'm actually afraid we'll have boxes in the front room when Lou comes. I must admit that there's quite a gram element to make up the muss. Now we're trying to master the curtain problem, and problem it is too, for they are all too short and must be faced at both ends. Quite a big job to render the best conditions, and we are really struggling. I'm trying to tell you the best way I can that it will be almost impossible to come there to visit. Mom just cannot do all the work alone, and there's just too much for me to fold my arms and walk out. While you're working overtime hours, we'd scarcely be able to really enjoy each other, and right now I'm not fit to come. I'm sure Lou will want to spend some time with you in Des Moines, and I'm sure too that he'll be gone again before time for the baby, and maybe I should make my visit then. I'll need you to boost my morale then, and I don't mean maybe. However, I shall really try to do as much as I possibly can before you come down on the 21st. And when you come, we'll survey the situation and decide then. Daddy says to wait a while on the cream shirt at Yonkers. I didn't hear from Lou today, but yesterday's letter was dated July 5th, and he's hoping each day to be on the next craft, or else get orders to fold up their base entirely and come home en masse. I doubt if he gets more than a 15-day leave. I'm just praying he won't be redeployed to the Pacific. Did you forget the card for Elizabeth? Write and tell me about the dress or yard goods, so I can really get to work. Love, Sweetie.
Ooh, yeah, like you're right. There's still this pervasive feeling that there's going to be a land war in Japan.
Yep, absolutely.
It's still there. It's still there. And then, so he'll be able to, so she's thinking that he's going to come back to Iowa for like a couple weeks and then he's going to be shipped out again.
And think about Bob. Now they're hearing, like, Bob was in Georgia. And it's like, okay, Bob seems a little safe. He's going to California. It's just not clear, like, what's going to happen.
And Frank has been in California. right? That's where
Frank's
he's been over there.
Yeah, he's been in the Pacific Theater basically for
the whole time.
Years at this point. It seems the whole time. We know that Bob was a letter does survive from Bob. I have to look into it. It was donated to one of the archives, and I believe one of the archives in Missouri has it. It was donated by Margaret before she passed away. She must have had it in her possession. But it's a 6-page letter. I know of this online from Bob, and he's talking about the insects I think he's seeing, which of course would intrigue Chester, when he's flying over North Africa. So we know that Bob was in the North African campaign, certainly, when he was in the European theater. But yeah, Frank's been in the Pacific the whole time. I don't think he wrote a 6-page letter about bugs. Chester would have liked that.
Well, when you said that Bob was writing about bugs, I was like, oh, it's a letter to Chester.
Yeah, most likely it was, and it wound up in Margaret's possession, at which point she donated it to
Margaret
as observations. Elizabeth? Yep. Yeah. So she must have had it at the end and then thought, well, this should go into the collections of an archive. And so those are there, and I'm working to get a copy of that letter because I think it's something people would like to see.
I would like to see that. I think that a bunch of people here would love to see us do a episode of that letter.
Yep. Yeah, just on that, and we'll have a special speaker for Bob. We'll have to figure that one out. But it's totally separate from the main storyline. But other than Chester, I've no doubt read this thing. That the worry of the land invasion of Japan just continues and continues. And then she just starts to get more stressed again. So in the middle of the letter, it was like, okay, I'm getting things done. And then they talk about the curtains. So here's more of the sewing, right? They've just moved. So obviously they're doing a lot at home. And she's like, now I can't come to Des Moines now because even though she's in her 3rd trimester, she's getting a lot of sewing work done for Laura. And Laura's doing tons of work. What's not mentioned is the person... Chester, where are you? Are you off puttering on the farm again? I didn't hear about Chester working in this portion of the letter. I heard about Laura working.
I did see a little thing here that made me think that perhaps she was sitting down writing the letter and Chester walked in from, puttering. And and she says, Daddy says to wait a while on the cream shirt at Yonkers. So he probably came in and he was like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm writing to Jeanne. And he's like, tell her to wait a bit on that cream shirt from Yonkers. And then, so that's why she kept going through that in there.
Yeah. So he's focused on other things at this moment. And maybe he had some calls in town and things.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he still does doctor stuff, right?
He's still the doctor. He's not always puttering. It's just fun to think that whenever Chester's missing from the scene that he's off puttering somewhere, observing nature, because that's what he likes to do. But other than that, that's the situation with Sweetie. And then she's going to write again within a week. She's going to continue.
So this was July 12th.
Yep.
And so the next letter is July 18th.
Yep. So 6 days later, we're getting these condensed letters of the timeline coming in.
Lacona, Iowa, July 18th, 1945. Dear Jeanne, your package arrived in this morning's mail, and I was surely surprised to receive it. But alas, very disappointed, for both dresses are too small. I guess that is really the awful truth as to my increasing breadth and bulge. The gray one is really beautiful, and I'm especially sorry to return it to you. It is too narrow through the shoulders. I'd ruin it. It's a little long-waisted, but the gathers across the front at the waist are already used up, and by the time I'm ready to have the baby, it will be stretched tight, but straight. And I'd not be able to wear it if I got much bigger, and I'm bound to. You know that. The print dress, too, is just too little. My ego has been so deflated, I can't look me in the face. Or maybe I should say, look me in the hips. So I'm boxing them up and returning them to you this afternoon so that you can return them, possibly, before you come home this weekend. I really think it would be best to abandon the idea of buying a dress ready-made. These were too small, and yet if you buy a size larger, they'd have to be made all over. They're going to go ahead and make up the brown Bemberg rayon that Mom has here, and with the 2 prints you've already bought me and the smocks and aprons, I'll get along all right. I hate to have to send them back, but there doesn't seem to be anything else to do.
Yeah. And so she's just becoming more self-conscious, basically, of everything.
Yeah, and like I said, you can't, this is a luxury to buy, nice dresses for maternity. Yeah. So, and that's something that, and especially if she can sew. And if you look at pictures, that time period of the fashions and stuff, like I like to do.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's tailored.
Extremely tailored. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you can see clothes are not only well made, but if you buy something ready made, you had it fitted.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, and she says like they would have to be, we'd have to, so you could buy a bigger dress and she could just deal with it, but like no.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how you wear clothes in the 1940s.
Not at all, no.
Yeah. So this definitely was, I feel really bad because she was like, oh, I bet they were so pretty.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I do think we've lost something there. Mm-hmm. There's a level when we see these old Hollywood movie photos and like our photos from our grandparents' generations from the 40s and even the 50s. Everybody just looks so perfectly poised. Their hair is perfect. And it's just that Hollywood kind of style of glamour that they all have. And a lot of it is because everything's so tailored. It has to be because it's meant to fit. Tailors today, the most time we see tailors are going to be for big special occasions. Ball gowns, evening wear, weddings, tuxedos for the guys at weddings, these sorts of things. Outside of that realm, the use of a tailor is just highly irregular. So I hope the tailors these days are doing well, and I'm sure they have very specific clientele. They really have to set it up carefully to ensure that they have continuous work. 40s, this wasn't a problem. People are going to tailors all the time.
Sweetie probably tailored a lot of her own clothes. She was able to. But then there's things that you do have to go to. And I think she even said it in a previous episode, like way in the beginning.
Way back, yeah. It was like a jacket or something.
I do like my last experience with a tailor, my daughter was in my sister's wedding and we bought a dress and it needed to be fitted to her. Yeah. And so we went to the tailor and it was just like a flower. It was kind of like she was an older flower girl. And that's all she had was weddings.
Yep.
It was just it was just wedding dresses. And she's like, I am booked out for months. Like we had to go to her very early on. And she's like, you don't need this soon. I was like, no. Yeah, so they do get a lot. Yeah. So I mean, obviously if it's your wedding, you're going to get tailored, but yeah, like you don't go for regular clothes.
No, not anymore. But back then they did a lot more frequently.
The cards are really nice. I'm glad you sent 3 of them, for I'll be able to send one to Elizabeth and still not be caught short again to yell for help all the way to Des Moines. We are looking forward very much to your visit this weekend. I guess if you come with the guard, we'll see you here. Taking it for granted, you'll let us know if we are to meet you in Liberty Center, or if you'll be unable to come. My letter from Lou this morning was dated July 11th. He'd had a letter from you saying the Afghan was half finished, and he says, quote, I'm anxious to see it, and I'll bet it will really be nice, unquote. He's quite anxious about your long working hours and your lack of sleep, and thinks somebody with proper authority should put their foot down. Says I who's got the proper authority and is there to enforce the orders. He hopes to leave there by the end of the month, but he hoped to leave by the 15th, and I guess when it's all over, he'll have hoped and looked forward to a good many set dates. I'm not sure he'll be here by time for the baby to come, and in a way I'd be glad if he couldn't see me now, while I'm fighting a losing fight in this battle of the bulge. Today is the 18th, you know, which starts the 8th month. And I keep hoping maybe the boat will be born a little ahead of time. Bob's address is still Georgia, but ranks has changed again. I don't know. Yes, here it is. Headquarters 7th Air Force, APO 331, care of Postmaster, San Francisco, California. Sister may want it for those posts, etc. Seems like you still have lots to do. The curtains were such a headache, and we've still not seen the finished product. But I guess they'll be all right. If you should happen to be downtown, try to get a block of the Roosevelt series and a block of the 3-cent green Iwo Jima flag-raising series. Just 1 block of each of them. I will see about more later on. I guess when you come, we'll be able to talk more, but I thought I ought to explain why I had to return the dresses. Love, Sweetie. P.S. Have you found out anything about the jars for sure?
Leave us hanging there, Sweetie. I wonder what that's all about.
What are the jars about, Sweetie? Yeah.
So she does. So this is funny because we talked about this earlier, you and I don't know if you remember. She asked Jeanne to get her some stamps.
Yes, she did. So for our listeners that may not have listened to other episodes, when she's mentioning the 3-cent green Iwo Jima flag raising series, or the Roosevelt series. This has to do with blocks of stamps because Lou and Sweetie are collecting the stamps and she wants to get the blocks and get them preserved for their collection. Of course, he's overseas, can't get them. She's not getting to Des Moines to get them. So Jeanne's going to be the one that's going to keep an eye on the collecting business over there for them, for their interest there. And then the Lou letter from July 11th where the dates are getting moved. So this is really not, I think, a big priority to get all the guys back from the European theater because the focus is on the Pacific theater. You know, everything big decision-wise, if there's things that have to be moved around, it's all going to defer to what's going on the West Coast. And so the dates are being moved, and it's not certain because we thought it was certain that, okay, Lou's going to be, in the previous letter, Lou's going to be home by the 1st of August. That doesn't seem to be the case from this letter. So the question is, will he be home when this baby is born? And that's not an answer we're going to have today. Does Lou get to be home to witness the birth of the child? We're going to leave everybody in suspense.
I know, you're leaving me in suspense too because I don't know.
Right? Yep. So
I'm keeping myself in the dark.
Yep. Is he going to get home? The other thing here is, and she kind of mentioned this, I think it was in the previous letter. If I go back to it, I'll go back to my reference here for it. Right. This was in the letter right before it. It said, I doubt if he gets more than a 15-day leave. We keep referencing Lou getting a 15-day leave. Because just because he's home doesn't mean he's not still in the Navy. It's still technically a leave. The war is still technically going on. She writes in that previous one, I doubt if he gets more than a 15-day leave. I'm just praying he won't be redeployed to the Pacific. So here's the key. As long as he's in England, he's not on leave yet. So if he can run out the clock in England and then get home, get the 15-day leave, the war might be over by the time he would be redeployed. And this is the timing of the thing. So there's going to be this sense increasingly as we get into the later part of summer 1945 as Lou's in England, which is he going to run out the clock on World War II? Is he going to manage to just basically, first of all, is he going to manage to do that and also just by circumstance and also get home in time to see the baby being born? There's all of this going on, but as long as he remains in England, he's safe in England. So it's, she's starting to say, I don't know, maybe that's why I think when we get to that section, she sees that Bob's seems to be going to California. So this is already happening. And I think that's making her nervous. So there's a lot unspoken here. And she says flat out, there's going to be probably a good many set dates. So she's cautious. And then she's becoming more conscious about how she looks. Like she just wants to look perfect for her husband when he comes home. And if he comes home, she's hoping he doesn't have to go again anywhere else. So it's timing.
This one you can kind of, and Jean's coming that weekend. So I don't know what the July 18th was. If it was like a Tuesday or something.
Yeah.
But Jean is going to be visiting that weekend.
Yeah.
So she's also not telling us like everything, she says, I'll just talk to you this weekend. But you can feel like she's a little bit like, not only is she feeling self-conscious, but she's got her brothers, both of them. That would freak me out. And then her husband. So she has a lot going on.
Yeah, but we have to remember where the war is at. I mean, everything's focused on one side. The last big article we saw in the Des Moines Register was a month earlier with the cost of Okinawa. They're worried about this. They're talking about this. It's unstated, but she can just at least compartmentalize. Okay, Lou's over here. He's getting a tan. He's getting a tan with the boys' night.
Hanging out with his friends, buying baby clothes.
Yeah,
he's fine.
Just keep doing that. Keep doing that. As she becomes increasingly self-conscious, you just keep doing that. You stay over there. It's fine. Because once he gets home, 15-day clock's going, and you hope the war is winding down on the other side now that there's this concentration of forces. And that's the last letter we were going to talk about today, Jamie. But I was looking at the historical calendar. So here it is, July 18th, 1945. And I have a photo of a headline to share with everybody here. So again, from the Des Moines Register, because this is the paper that they're looking at. Des Moines Register is getting a lot of attention in this podcast because of Iowa.
Well, this is the paper that Sweetie would have been had
this
access
is the one she
to.
would have been seeing for sure. Jeanne would have been reading it. So this comes in on July 18th. Look at that, the same day as the letter that we just read. And here's Harry. President Truman presides over the big three. And what this is in reference to is Harry Truman is now in Europe. President Truman's over there. He's meeting with Winston Churchill, and he's meeting with Joseph Stalin at the Potsdam Conference. This is going on at the same time. So we should bring up what Potsdam is, because there's a couple important things that happen at Potsdam. So the Potsdam Conference actually started the day before on the 17th. It goes to August 2nd. So it's going to last for a couple weeks. And this is really about planning out post-war what's happening in Europe, to make sure these things don't repeat. And there's different things that come out of the Potsdam Conference, the agreements and things, but this is a continuation of the carving up of Germany, of what's going to be happening in Eastern Europe. And when we talk about the cost, we've been talking about the Soviets closing in on Berlin right before the end of the war. Soviets are very much in control of Eastern Europe at this point. There's no contesting that. It's difficult to challenge that because of just the sheer manpower that the Soviets are occupying in Eastern Europe at this point, all the way into Berlin. So Potsdam Conference is really focusing on that. But we also, at this point, we by now know that Truman's totally aware of the Oppenheimer project. He is not sure if the test is going to be successful yet, if it's going to work yet. And he is aware of this by the time he gets there, and you've got these two major allies in Churchill and in Stalin. And the question is, do you tell him what you're going to attempt during the war? And he does decide to disclose this to the allies at the Potsdam Conference. And we have some small sections here. I'm not going to go through all of it, but if you're following Mr. McCullough,
break out your textbooks.
You got your textbooks here, and this is in the section called "To the Best of My Ability," and this is around the page. Potsdam starts around page 405, but this is 428 because again, this is a 2-week stretch of time. There's a lot going on that McCullough is going to carry here, but there's a couple little sections where they're talking about him making this disclosure and what they're thinking about with that land invasion for Japan. And Eisenhower is also around. So we had the first mention of Eisenhower from the previous week because he'd accepted the surrender of the German army. We saw actually the pen.
The pen.
Yeah, I'll have to put a picture of that up on the website. That's at the Harry S. Truman Presidential Library. They have the surrender pen that the Germans used to sign the surrender document that Eisenhower gifted to Harry Truman. It goes into this little thing about the talk about the strategy in the Pacific and the use of the atomic bomb. And what McCullough writes is Bradley, a fellow Missourian, had never met Truman until now and liked what he saw. Who didn't like Harry Truman, right? He was direct, unpretentious, clear-thinking, and forceful. To Bradley, it seemed that Truman had already made up his mind to use the new weapon. So it's interesting that McCullough makes this note. Mm-hmm. Though neither Bradley nor Eisenhower was asked for an opinion, Eisenhower said he opposed the use of the bomb. He thought Japan was already defeated. To Stimson earlier, he had expressed the hope that the United States would not be the first to deploy a weapon so horrible. In time, however, Eisenhower would concede his reaction was personal and based on no analysis of the subject. Eisenhower also advised Truman not to beg the Russians to come into the war with Japan, though he acknowledged that no power on earth could keep the Red Army out of that war unless victory came before they could get in. If Truman, as implied in his diary, truly believed that the Manhattan Project, would bring such victory instantly, this would have been the time for him to have said so. But he did not, which suggests either that he was still less than sure about the bomb, or that contrary to Bradley's impression, he had still to make up his mind. But all of us wanted Russia in the war, he would tell his daughter some years later. Had we known what the bomb would do, we'd never have wanted the bear in the picture. So there's this whole other aspect that we haven't really talked about, which is if the bomb doesn't work, and you're facing a land invasion with Japan, of which you have to cross all your troops across the Pacific, you want the Soviets to help you fight it because they're close.
They're right there.
Yeah. So he's stuck a bit here where he's like, if we're doing this by ourselves, it's going to be longer. And Stalin is an ally at this conference. So they're talking about that. Now, Stalin's already got spies in the United States. There's espionage where they're aware they're working on this. So as the histories would say that Stalin's, I forget the the details about that, but it's remarked that Stalin was already aware that the Americans were working on something big. So, spies.
And then Truman. So this is a very interesting situation because if Stalin is aware and he has that in his pocket, and it's like, if he's like, is Truman going to tell me?
Right.
This is a test of loyalty.
Yeah.
Well, at least, if not loyalty, like at least, alignment. But
what is this, 3 months since he became president? He's having to work with Stalin. Yeah, it's a lot for one guy working on. They don't know if the test works. So that's kind of amazing that we get the little Eisenhower play here where it's like, because he didn't know this, he couldn't have done this other thing. So it speaks to the fact that he wasn't sure it was going to work. And
when did the test occur? Did the test occur after July 18th?
He gets the word, I believe, during the conference. So, which is amazing.
I'm sorry, I didn't watch the movie. So if you watch the movie and, like people out there watch the movie and you understand, like I didn't watch it. Now I have to.
Yeah, you got to watch the Oppenheimer movie. It really is phenomenal. So that was on Friday the 20th. This is Friday the 20th of July. On the next page, if you have the McCullough book open on page 430 of the hardcover, before noon on Saturday, July 21st, so the next day, Henry Stimson received by special courier the eagerly awaited report from General Groves, the first description of the first nuclear explosion. And, as Stimson said, an immensely powerful document. By early afternoon, he and General Marshall had reviewed it together, and at 3:30, Stimson brought it to the president. Burns was summoned, the doors were closed. Stimson began to read aloud in a scratchy old man's voice. The test had been, quote, successful beyond the most optimistic expectations of anyone, end quote. The test bomb had not been dropped from a plane, but exploded on top of a 100-foot steel tower. If you watch the movie, you see this test. The energy generated was estimated to be the equivalent of 15,000 to 20,000 tons of TNT. And then he actually provides the text of this document and what it says for the first time in history, there was a nuclear explosion. And what an explosion. For a brief period, there was a lightning effect within a radius of 20 miles equal to several suns in midday. A huge ball of fire was formed, which lasted for several seconds. This ball mushroomed and rose to a height of over 10,000 feet before it dimmed. The light from the explosion was seen clearly at Albuquerque, Santa Fe, Silver City, El Paso, and other points generally to about 180 miles away. The sound was heard to the same distance in a few instances, but generally to about 100 miles. Only a few windows were broken, although one was some 125 miles away. A massive cloud was formed, which surged and billowed upward with tremendous power, reaching the substratosphere at an elevation of 41,000 feet. 36,000 feet above the ground in about 5 minutes, breaking without interruption through a temperature inversion at 17,000 feet, which most of the scientists thought would stop it. 2 supplementary explosions occurred in the cloud shortly after the main explosion. The cloud contained several thousand tons of dust picked up from the ground and a considerable amount of iron in the gaseous form. Our present thought is that this iron ignited when it mixed with the oxygen in the air to cause these supplementary explosions. Huge concentrations of highly radioactive materials resulted from the fission and were contained in this cloud. And then he continues, McCullough. The report described how the steel from the tower had evaporated and the greenish cast of the pulverized dirt in a crater more than 1,000 feet in diameter. So this is the report that the president's getting the next day that says, hey, we're not sure, if this is going to work because maybe the Russians will come into the fighting here in Japan. Next day later, Mr. President, I believe the test has been successful. And they get this description. And the description's amazing to hear. It's the first time we hear really that mushroom cloud that I think we all have an image of in our minds. The movie does this really well. If you haven't seen the Oppenheimer movie, it's a long movie, but you should definitely watch the Oppenheimer movie. But yeah, so we know this is coming now, and it's like, oh, okay. And you have to wonder.
Within a few days of this last letter from Sweetie,
yeah,
they had this test, and then they were able to get the results from the test, the analysis of the test to the president. Oh, geez. And, I understand. And of course, we're sitting here and, we're not capable of making those decisions and stuff. But the fact that they saw the destruction and was like, let's drop 2.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
you know what I mean? So I don't know.
It's going to be, the decision is definitely coming up to drop them. This hasn't happened yet, obviously, in our timeline. We will talk about it when it comes up. But to know that this conference is going on, and one day it's like, okay, Russians and land invasion, and then this report comes in that says, this is definitely going to work if all goes according, basically, to plan, and beyond optimism, as they were talking about, as we get that description. And here's Truman sitting at the Potsdam conference with Churchill and Stalin, and he has this piece of information, not just that they're working on, but how successful that test was. And what's he going to do? So I find it fascinating that they were talking in a different light the day prior. It's an amazing section. It's definitely a section of the McCullough that, if people are interested in this portion, and I know I spent some time on it, but it sets the tone, because the world's going to change once this happens. This is a different tone to the 20th century for sure. That's going to occur here. But we're not there yet. In the meantime, Lou's in England. Her brothers are heading to the West Coast or somewhere in the Pacific theater of war, and Sweetie is just hoping Jeanne can get home and she can catch up with her. And Chester remains puttering around. So Chester remains puttering. But beyond that, that's everything for this week. Thank you, everybody, to our audience. There's only a couple more episodes after this one until the very end of season 1. We are going to answer these questions by the end of season 1 with the ending of 1945. So check out the schedule on the website, actually, on the podcast link at www.lovesweetiepodcast.com. Season 2 is going to begin in a few weeks as we head into those post-war years. So thank you, everyone, and we hope you have a good day.
See you next week.